Have you ever wondered why a kid can perfectly belt out an entire television theme song, but totally struggles to just say a simple phrase like, I want water? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into educational illustrations on single-word gestalts and gestalt language processing. We're going to figure out exactly why these incredible learners often get stuck, and most importantly, how to actually support their language development. Because if you've ever felt like traditional milestones just don't capture the reality of how some kids learn to communicate, you are in exactly the right place. We're about to explore a completely different, entirely natural way that language blooms.
Is my child a Gestalt language processor? It's a question echoing in the minds of so many parents, educators, and speech-language pathologists right now. And look, you might be feeling a really deep sense of frustration because a child's language just seems stuck. They might be incredibly expressive, highly musical, yet totally unable to tell you what they want for lunch. Today, I am promising you a brand new roadmap to understand exactly why that happens and precisely how you can help.
Section 1. 2 Paths to Language.
Okay, let's dive right into this. For decades, we've basically been taught that there's just a single, predictable, linear progression to language. But the research, which actually spans back to the 70s and 80s and was quantified more recently by the Natural Language Acquisition Framework, reveals there are actually 2 natural, parallel paths to developing language. Let's compare them. On the analytic path, which is the one we all know, a child learns single words like car or bus, eventually combining them into really flexible phrases. But on the Gestalt path, these learners don't start with single words at all. They start with long, often inflexible chunks or phrases, heavily reliant on rich intonation. The key takeaway here, we need to normalize both of these as perfectly natural ways to eventually build complex, self-generated grammar.
Think about it like building pyramids. Analytic processors, or word babies, build upward from the bottom. They take small blocks, those single words, and they stack them to build a sentence. Gestalt processors, or intonation babies, do the exact opposite. They start at the top with a massive unbroken block, like an entire song or a long phrase like, wheels on the bus go round and round. And over time, they slowly break that giant block down into smaller, flexible pieces.
So what does this actually look like in everyday life? Well, an analytic learner hears, let's go to the park, and extracts the single word, park, to communicate. Super straightforward, right? But a Gestalt learner associates a whole routine with an emotional phrase. When it's time to get ready, they might borrow a highly intonated phrase they heard on TV, something like, let's get ready to rumble, simply to mean, hey, it's time to transition.
Section 2. What is a Gestalt?
To really grasp how to support these learners, we first have to understand their foundational building block. We know the analytic building block is the word, but what exactly is a Gestalt? A language gestalt is an organized whole or a chunk of language that is perceived as a single unit of meaning. For a Gestalt learner, they literally do not hear the individual words inside the phrase. If they learn the phrase to infinity and beyond, they don't know it's 4 separate words. To them, it is one giant, unbreakable unit of meaning, usually acquired during a highly emotional or engaging experience.
What's really fascinating here is the idea of a soundtrack to an experience. Because Gestalt learners process episodic memory differently. They tie rich memories, sensory inputs, and specific emotions together with the musical intonation of what was actually said in that exact moment. The language is naturally acquired as a soundtrack to that specific event. It's not directly taught from a flashcard.
So how do you spot this? Well, you might hear long, richly intonated utterances that are completely unintelligible to you. Or you might hear a child perfectly, precisely echoing lines from their favorite YouTube videos or TV shows. They have incredible auditory memories, but they might really struggle to communicate basic wants and needs simply because their scripts aren't literal.
Section 3. The single word trap.
This brings us to a major central conflict. What happens when a kid naturally learns through large, emotional chunks, but the adults around them are desperately trying to teach them using traditional, single-word methods? We really have to ask, why do these highly capable, incredibly musical learners suddenly hit a wall in their language development? Why do they get stuck? Well, the answer lies in something we urgently need to recognize, and that's the danger of the single-word trap.
The absolute crucial point is this. When you directly teach a single word to a Gestalt processor, like holding up a flashcard and making them say apple, they process that single word as an entire unbreakable Gestalt. Because it's only one word, it literally can't be broken down any further. It becomes a rigid, stuck Gestalt in their head forever. It does not lead to natural language development because it cannot be combined naturally with other parts.
Section 4. The 6 NLA stages.
Luckily, there is a well-researched solution. To avoid the single-word trap and support true language growth, we rely on the Natural Language Acquisition Framework, or NLA. This clinical protocol maps out exactly how Gestalt learners progress. Let's see how this builds across the 6 stages. Stage 1 is the use of whole language gestalts or scripts. Stage 2 is mitigation, where they mix and match parts, like taking the script "let's go" and adding it to the script "to the park." By stage 3, they finally break things down into isolated single words. And then, stages 4 through 6 are where they start building back up, eventually achieving completely self-generated, complex grammar.
Now, the most critical phase for adults to understand is stage 1. This stage requires deep empathy and serious detective work. Your job isn't to force compliance or demand they say things your way. Your job is to figure out the emotional meaning behind their scripts. When they quote a cartoon, what are they actually trying to share with you? Finding that underlying meaning fosters a profound level of trust.
Looking at the progression here, the NLA framework builds upward. You start at the base by helping the child see the whole picture and express themselves safely. As they move up, they learn to find patterns, improve processing, and eventually express complex thoughts clearly with complete grammar. They get to the exact same destination as analytic processors. They're just using a completely different vehicle to get there.
Section 5. Supporting language development. So how do we put this into practice today? Let's transition into actionable advice for parents, educators, and SLPs on how to start properly supporting a Gestalt language processor right now. Here are your critical do's and don'ts. Do acknowledge their gestalts. Smile, hum along, show them you hear them. Narrate your day naturally and model language about 50% of the time using easy, memorable phrases like "let's go" or "I love that." But crucially, do not do single-word training. Do not prompt them to speak. And absolutely avoid constantly asking them questions at stage 1, because questions just become another script they will predictably echo right back to you.
Finally, it is so vital that we listen to the lived experiences of autistic adults who actually process language this way. As autistic SLP Jay Sykes beautifully puts it, we do not arrive in parts of speech, we arrive whole. Gestalt language development is a deeply cultural, affirming way of communicating. By honoring this, we build relational safety, moving away from pathologizing their natural voice and moving toward true connection.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question for you to think about. Are you ready to stop teaching single words and start sharing experiences? By shifting your mindset from compliance to connection, you can unlock an absolute world of understanding for the Gestalt language processor in your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep listening, and I'll catch you next time.